The Iditarod, presented by Eyes of the Husky. History of the Iditarod, produced by Abby Anderson.
The Iditarod, aka the last greatest race on Earth, has a very interesting and motivational story of how it became a famous race. It all began January 1925, when the town of Nome was hit with an outbreak of diphtheria that only targeted small children. Diphtheria is a highly contagious bacterial disease causing inflammation of the mucous membranes, formation of false membrane in the throat that hinders breathing and swallowing, and potentially fatal heart and nerve damage by a bacterial toxin in the blood. It is now rare in developed countries because of the immunization. During this time, Dr. Welch had the medicine to cure the children, but he was afraid it would poison them because of its age. So he sent a radio telegram to the nearest town, Juneau, to see if they could send some new, cleaner medicine. The telegram soon reached Governor Boone and all of the other important officials. So soon they realized that the nearest supply of serum was in an Anchorage hospital 1,000 miles away. The officials in Juneau considered flying the serum to Nome, but it was too dangerous to operate open cockpit planes in extreme cold temperatures. In these days, planes were used only during the summer times. Also, Nome was an ice-bound port, so boats were not an option. So the officials decided that the serum could travel halfway by train, and the only other option was by dog sled team. On January 26th, an Anchorage doctor carefully packaged the serum for a long journey. The bottles had to be protected to keep from freezing. The train later arrived in Netnya Station when they had the serum unpackaged and in the sled of Bill Shannon. Later, Bill took off with a sled of dog teams to the next station, or checkpoint, to pass the serum along to another musher. From then on, the mushers who volunteered would take the serum to the next checkpoint. Finally, the serum arrived in Nome, and all of the children who were still alive were given the serum. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the history of the Iditarod. Years and years later, Robert Reddington was inspired by this historical moment. So he decided that he wanted to bring this moment back. So he created the Iditarod.
Popperation, produced by Sarahann Adams. Although you can't prepare for everything, preparation is a very important part of the Iditarod. Rookie or veteran, all mushers must prepare. You have to do many things to prepare for the Iditarod, but most important are the dogs. The dogs are the race. You have to build a bond of trust with them, teach them commands, and most of all, never let them lose their desire to run.
All the things that we've learned in the last 40 years of this race have been turned around and programmed into what is good for the dogs. That's been the ultimate, is what is good for the dogs.
The next part of preparation is the Iditarod musher qualifications. The mushers have to start with at least 12 dogs, and during the race, they have to take a mandatory 8-hour break and a mandatory 24-hour break. But no matter how many standards they have to meet, or obstacles they have to face, they do it all for the beauty of the Iditarod and the spirit of the dogs. Like everything in the Iditarod, there are things you can't prepare for. Sometimes, depending on the conditions of course, the dogs can get hypothermia, frostbite, diarrhea, and many other unpredictable illnesses. The mushers can get sick too while on the trail. It can get so bad that they start hallucinating. Also, sled malfunctions, lost supplies, and sled crashes play a big role. Due to the unpredictables, the mushers aren't the only ones who have to prepare. The veterinarians, volunteers, and rangers have to be prepared for anything. The vets of Alaska have to do a lot to prepare for the Iditarod. The dogs have to be checked by a licensed veterinarian for heart abnormalities. They must be dewormed and have a complete physical examination. All this preparation is for one thing, or 12 to 16 things, the dogs. So, there are many things everyone has to prepare for in the Iditarod. Also important, prevention. For example, what keeps those dogs from turning into chili dogs? Chili dogs, produced by Makaleigh Niemann. Dogs' health is one of the most important topics in the Iditarod. We need to keep those chili dogs warm, don't we? After the dogs are dropped, they need to be taken care of, and this vet explains how it is done.
Race. It's been quite an experience over what I see on a normal daily basis. Dogs can't run a mile or two, and these are running 100 miles a day. The main purpose of the drop dogs in Anchorage is to follow up and care for the dogs that the mushers left on the trail. The trail veterinarians take care of them, treat them, and then we follow up with the treatment when they come into Anchorage. Most of the ones that are dropped are lameness-related problems, pulled muscles, shoulders, wrists, etc. It's nice to watch them come in, and as they run coming in, you can see if one's bobbing its head or limping or something, checking them for harness rubs, checking them for lameness. And at every checkpoint, we listen to heart, lungs, we check their appetite, their attitude, their weight, and we have a regimen that goes down. All of them are really good. There's a lot of return veterinarians because it is an infectious sport.
This next video is of Dallas Seavey arriving in White Mountain.
What's that angle park like that? You guys back up a little bit.
As you can see, the dogs have to wear their coats and their booties. This video is about some prisoners that have volunteered to care for the dogs.
That maintains and cares for our dogs that are waiting to be picked up by the mushers. And the women inmates at this correctional facility really do a super job. They're very compassionate, very caring. They really care for the dog over there. If we have any medication to give, they take care of that for us, and we're very fortunate to have them.
This final video shows a process in which making sure the dogs are healthy.
So first thing that we're going to do is check their hydration, make sure that they've got nice moist mucous membranes, that they've got good blood flow, make sure that they've got their scan returns, it's called skin trigger, make sure that they're well hydrated, make sure their attitude is good, that they're happy. We check to make sure that they've got adequate fat reserves, mostly just to let the musher know whether or not they need to get them fattened back up. Next, what we do is we check their heart rate and their lungs.
As said before, the dogs, along with their mushers, have to wear warm clothing so they don't get too cold. These pictures are of the dogs wearing their coats and their booties. To have the energy to run, the dogs have to eat good food, such as fat, meat, and protein. Here are some pictures showing that. Trail mix, produced by Madison, Norrid.
Dogs are the main factor of the Iditarod, and different breeds and health can come into play with them. The Iditarod is a huge race filled with many components that make up the great race, such as the dogs. The dogs are the leaders of the race. Different breeds and health can come into play with them. The ideal breed for an Iditarod-ready dog is Husky or Alaskan Husky. Watch this video as Susan Wagner tells us about some of the breeds.
Most of the time when people are thinking Husky, they're thinking the big training Malamute or the Siberian Huskies, which are AKC breeds. For true competitive speed mushing, technically they breed fast-running dog to fast-running dog. And there's kind of been an evolution. Actually, back in the 60s, 70s, there's a little Saluki in there, a little Irish Setter, lots of breeds. And that was actually called the Aurora Husky for a while. When Echo Ellis came in the late 80s from Europe, he brought with him what they call the Eurohound. What it did is it brought in a lot shorter coat, it brought in a little longer leg, a little bigger dog on there, and basically the year he came, he won the world championship, so now you're seeing a lot more of that bred in, so these dogs look a lot houndier.
The dogs at Denali National Park are more freighting dog, they're a bigger dog, they're a heavier dog, more Malamute style. Those dogs are hitched up to very long sleds where the rangers will go into the backcountry with those dogs and they might freight equipment into Wonder Lake cabin or they might freight something out. Those dogs are going to be a lot slower, but they will go for a long time.
As you saw, the evolution of dogs has varied throughout the ages, ranging from big dogs, little dogs, dogs with long legs, and dogs with short legs. So many genes! Now, watch as Iditarod champion himself, Dallas Seavey, tells us about the pride and joy of his Iditarod racers, his dogs.
It's a sign of a great dog team. I really feel like training a dog team is kind of like art that doesn't last. You build this beautiful dog team, you put them together, and for that one space and time, you have a 16-dog team that can conquer anything. We only have a limited amount of time, let's make the most of it. I won the Iditarod and we brought home a check for $50,400 and a new Dodge pickup. I then promptly turned around and wrote a check for $57,000 for a container of dog food, 21 tons. To field a seriously competitive team, you're looking at about $250,000 a year. We don't have the luxury of not doing something that might bring in a couple grand, so we're doing whatever we can to make ends meet. Racing is the one thing that I don't really try to make money doing. There are other races besides the Iditarod where you can pick up 5 or 10 grand here or there, but our focus is winning the Iditarod. I'm not going to change how we train the team for the income. That we have to train that perfect racing team. We'll find how to make the money on the side.
As you can see, Dallas is proud of his little pups. And of course, he used all his Iditarod prize money for food for his dogs. How sweet. He knew how to keep his dogs healthy and strong. Food. Food is another factor that can change the game if you give the dogs trail mix. I know what you're thinking. Dogs don't eat trail mix, so what do they eat anyways? Most mushers prefer to feed their dogs raw meat because of its nutrients and protein to help the dogs carry on. Another option is to give the dogs regular kibble because of its nutrients as well. Sometimes the musher can give a mix of both. You've got to give the dogs good food for a great performance. Raw meat is usually used to feed the dogs. The musher can give their dogs around 3 to 5 pounds of meat, different varieties of raw meat each day. These dogs are strong, no matter the breed, food they eat, or how fast they run, because of the love the mushers give to the dog. There are so many requirements that you have to run the Iditarod, that you lose the focus of what really matters the most, the compassion that pulls together all of their strengths and weaknesses to create this team that sticks together through good or bad. That is what the Iditarod is truly about.
Hang on, buddy. I spend these dogs' whole life teaching them that they are Superman. They can do anything. They have no weakness. And part of that secret is not ever letting them see that they have weakness.